Ride the signal through the unknown. This is the cryptic current.
The Billionaire's experiment involved publicly burning a significant portion of his liquid assets. This act was framed not as destruction, but as a demonstration of money's perceived lack of intrinsic value. Financial experts note that burning currency is a symbolic gesture, but the underlying value in modern economies is tied to complex systems of trust and obligation. The immediate legal concern centered on the destruction of assets, which can intersect with laws regarding fraud, waste, and obligations to creditors. Authorities began investigating whether this public burning constituted a deliberate attempt to evade financial responsibilities or deceive stakeholders. The case highlighted a tension between an individual's radical philosophical expression and the legal frameworks that govern property and economic conduct. Comparisons were drawn to historical acts of protest or performance art involving currency, though the scale and legal context here were unprecedented. The investigation would need to determine intent. Was this a genuine, if extreme, philosophical statement, or a calculated financial maneuver? This individual's wealth accumulation followed a common tech industry pattern: early involvement in a successful startup, followed by strategic investments in emerging technologies. By middle age, his financial portfolio included holdings across multiple sectors, from software development to renewable energy ventures. This level of wealth placed him within the top 0.001% globally, a bracket where financial decisions can influence markets and industries. Public statements from this period reveal a growing philosophical questioning about the purpose and impact of such concentrated resources. This disillusionment with wealth itself represents a documented psychological phenomenon among some ultra-high net worth individuals. The transition from wealth accumulation to questioning its value follows patterns observed in other successful entrepreneurs who reach similar financial peaks. The individual began publicly challenging the concept of money, describing it as a collective fiction, a belief system without inherent worth. This philosophical stance questioned the foundations of modern economic systems, where value is assigned rather than intrinsic. To test this theory and make a demonstrative point, they planned a literal, extreme experiment. The approach was drastic, moving from theoretical debate into tangible, high-stakes action. Such demonstrations often aim to prove a principle through personal sacrifice or radical behavior. The core motivation blended self-conviction with a desire to communicate an idea to a wider audience. This phase represents the transition from belief to action, where abstract concepts meet real-world consequences. The experiment's design intentionally removed the safety nets of conventional financial and social systems. The systematic burning of cash was not a spontaneous act, but a deliberate process carried out over an extended period. Reports and legal documents indicate the total amount destroyed reached approximately $100 million. This scale of monetary destruction is comparable to the annual budgets of small municipalities or the market capitalization of minor corporations. The process involved methodical destruction rather than a single dramatic event, suggesting careful planning and execution. Such systematic elimination of currency represents an extreme financial experiment with tangible economic consequences. The deliberate removal of this magnitude of cash from circulation would have measurable effects on local or regional economies. Legal documentation of the process indicates official awareness and investigation of the monetary destruction. The term experiment suggests this was conducted with specific objectives or hypotheses about the effects of removing currency from an economic system. The funds used were not solely personal assets. Investigations determined a significant portion originated from a private investment fund under his management. This type of fund pools capital from multiple investors for specific strategies. Fund managers have a fiduciary duty to act in their clients' best interests. Using client funds for unauthorized purposes breaches this legal and ethical obligation. Such actions can lead to severe civil penalties and criminal charges. The scale of the misappropriation often determines the severity of the legal consequences. This revelation shifted the case from a personal failure to a potential financial crime. This transitioned the act from a bizarre personal stunt into the realm of alleged financial misconduct. Such a shift often involves moving from personal motivations to actions with broader economic or legal consequences. Financial misconduct can include fraud, embezzlement, or market manipulation, depending on the specific allegations. The legal reckoning began as authorities in multiple jurisdictions took notice. This multi-jurisdictional response is common in cases with cross-border financial implications. Authorities may include financial regulators, law enforcement agencies, or international bodies. Their involvement typically initiates investigations, evidence gathering, and potential legal proceedings. This phase marks a critical point where personal actions face formal institutional scrutiny. The financial crimes he faced were among the most severe in white-collar law. These charges typically involve complex schemes to misappropriate funds. The central allegation was a specific form of fraud: the deliberate destruction of fund assets. This meant investor capital was not just mismanaged, but actively eradicated. Such asset destruction is rare, as most financial fraud aims to conceal or redirect value. The act burned investor money, but notably, it also consumed his own financial stake. This self-destructive element distinguishes it from typical embezzlement patterns. In legal terms, destroying assets held in trust represents a profound breach of fiduciary duty. The defense did not dispute that the physical currency was destroyed. Instead, they presented the act as a failed philosophical experiment. They argued the individual genuinely believed they were demonstrating a deeper truth about value and perception. This framing attempted to shift the focus from criminal action to misguided conviction. The core legal contention was a claimed lack of intent to defraud, a key element in such cases. Philosophical arguments challenging material value are not uncommon in legal history, though rarely as a direct defense for destruction of property. The prosecution's challenge was to prove criminal intent existed despite this unconventional justification. This created a unique legal battle over the interpretation of motive versus action. The conviction on major charges marked the legal conclusion to the case. This outcome followed standard federal prosecution procedures, where evidence is presented before a jury. Federal sentencing guidelines typically consider factors like crime severity and criminal history. The lengthy prison term reflects the serious nature of the convicted offenses. Such sentences serve multiple purposes, including punishment, deterrence, and public safety. Federal prisons operate under strict regulations, with structured daily routines for inmates. This outcome represents the final phase of the criminal justice process after investigation and trial. The case demonstrates how serious criminal conduct leads to substantial consequences within the legal system. The court's ruling established a clear legal boundary. Philosophical beliefs cannot justify the destruction of others' invested capital. This legal principle protects financial systems from actions justified solely by personal ideology. A fundamental limitation in such cases is our inability to access an individual's true, unfiltered state of mind. This creates a significant investigative challenge, separating genuine conviction from calculated deception. One central question remains: was this a deliberate fraud disguised as performance art? Performance art often challenges societal norms, but it typically does not involve the destruction of tangible financial assets belonging to others. The legal system must therefore distinguish between protected artistic expression and criminal acts of fraud. This case highlights the complex intersection of personal belief, artistic intent, and legal accountability. The legal record documents actions and events, but cannot definitively answer psychological questions about motivation or mental state. This creates a fundamental gap between what can be proven in court and what might explain extreme behavior. A mental health crisis can manifest in ways that are legally actionable, yet the underlying cause remains a matter for clinical assessment, not judicial verdict. Conversely, a search for meaning, however sincere, does not excuse actions that violate laws designed to protect others. Wealth and resources can insulate an individual, allowing a personal quest to escalate without the usual social checks and balances. This pattern is observed in cases where immense privilege removes the practical constraints that guide most people's behavior. The resulting actions may be recorded factually, but the driving force, crisis, or quest remains locked within the individual's private experience. Thus, the historical record provides a sequence of events, while the human story behind them often resists conclusive explanation. The event is frequently mischaracterized as a spontaneous, irrational act by an unstable individual. This sensational framing ignores the real financial victims, the investors who suffered tangible capital losses. Such narratives minimize the calculated, methodical nature of the process involved. It was not a sudden, impulsive event like a bonfire, but a prolonged, deliberate series of actions. This distinction is crucial for understanding the event as a financial scheme rather than a personal breakdown. By reframing it away from eccentricity, we focus on the systemic impact and premeditated execution. The financial crime described was not a faceless offense against an abstract system. It directly harmed specific individuals and organizations who had placed their trust and capital in the perpetrator. This case provides critical lessons about the psychology that can develop in environments of extreme wealth. One key takeaway is the profound social and psychological isolation that can occur at the highest financial levels. This isolation can foster a distorted perception of reality, where normal rules and consequences seem not to apply. The environment removes standard social feedback mechanisms, allowing risky or unethical decisions to go unchallenged. This disconnect from broader societal norms is a recurring pattern in major financial frauds. The case stands as a stark reminder of how the mechanics of immense wealth can create the conditions for catastrophic personal and financial failure. The ability to burn such sums speaks not just to wealth, but to a detachment from the material consequences that govern most people's lives. This level of financial insulation is often observed in cases involving extreme resource disparity. It represents a fundamental disconnect from the economic pressures that define survival for the majority. The boundary of philosophy and law presents a unique challenge in such contexts. You cannot litigate a philosophical point with other people's money. This principle highlights a limitation where abstract debate meets tangible financial responsibility. Legal systems are designed to adjudicate claims based on evidence and statute, not theoretical positions. Using capital to settle ideological disputes often falls outside established judicial frameworks. The court's ruling established a fundamental legal principle. personal conviction cannot justify violating fiduciary responsibilities or criminal statutes. Fiduciary duty refers to the legal obligation to act in the best interest of another party, typically involving financial or legal trust. When radical ideas transition from belief to action using others' resources, they cross into criminal territory under the law. This legal boundary exists to protect individuals and organizations from financial exploitation and mismanagement. The transition from radical belief to criminal action often follows a pattern of justification that ignores legal obligations. Such cases demonstrate how personal conviction, when improperly applied to others' assets, violates both ethical and legal standards. Fiduciary responsibility is a legal obligation requiring financial custodians to act solely in their clients' best interests. This duty is absolute and non-negotiable, forming the foundation of trust in financial management. Fund managers must manage entrusted capital with legally defined care, not personal experimentation. Breaching this duty constitutes a serious legal violation with severe consequences. Such breaches can result in substantial financial penalties, license revocation, and criminal charges. This serves as an ultimate cautionary tale about the critical importance of fiduciary duty. The legal framework exists to protect investors from mismanagement of their assets. Financial professionals who violate this trust face both legal and reputational destruction. While money's value is a social construct, its effects are undeniably real. This abstract agreement determines concrete life outcomes. Access to healthcare, education, and nutrition directly correlates with financial resources. Security, both physical and psychological, is often purchased through this system. Opportunity for advancement is frequently gated by financial means. The mechanism operates globally, though its specific forms vary between cultures. This creates patterns where resource allocation shapes survival chances. The construct's power lies in its universal acceptance, not in any physical property of currency. The illusion was a shared fiction, a collective belief that held society together. Attempting to destroy this fiction by proving it false demonstrated its powerful, real-world function. This is similar to how financial systems or national identities operate. They function because people collectively agree they have value. The individual who challenged the fiction faced consequences not for philosophical debate, but for violating established rules. The outcome was a prison sentence, showing that real-world systems enforce their protective boundaries. This pattern occurs across various domains. Challenging fundamental social agreements often triggers institutional responses. The rules protecting shared fictions are as tangible as legal codes and enforcement mechanisms. Attempting to burn the fiction resulted in being burned by the very systems designed to maintain social cohesion.
If the signal hooked you, subscribe and catch the next ripple.